Because smoking a joint to me is a journey. It's a journey of association, of remembrance, of also watching your own attitude, your own feelings change, sensing parts of your body that are now relaxed or something like that. So the whole idea, and as the joint gets smaller and smaller, we'll go through that later, it's like
looking forward to that.
The taste smell changes as you go through, right?
Hey everybody, this is Derek Gilman. Welcome to High Rollers. Joining us today is one of the pioneers of the cannabis connoisseur movement. He has been judging the Emerald Cup for 14 years now. This guy has smoked more strains and more varieties than anyone else I know. I'm pleased and thrilled to welcome here Swami Chaitanya.
Thanks, Derek. It's great to be here.
So, how you doing today?
Well, I just smoked another joint, so I'm kind of cruising, right?
You're always smoking joints. You're always smoking joints. We're going to do another joint smoking session here soon enough, but you couldn't wait. You need to get started right in. So, as I just got through saying, you actually were one of the pioneers in this cannabis connoisseur movement. You know, it's something that, it's really dear to me. And tell us how that began.
Well, I mean, I really first grew my first plant in North Beach in San Francisco back in the late 70s. And then I didn't grow much, but I was traveling. I was going to places like Nepal, Afghanistan, India, and so on. And, so I was trying to think. I smoked some hash in Jerusalem years ago, and in Kathmandu and in Kabul and so on. So some of those places you can't even go now, right?
And what compelled you to go over there and do this?
Well, it was actually a spiritual quest, and along the way you encounter the cannabis, right?
And did you go alone?
Well, no, I actually went the first time I was in Jerusalem, I was working on a film about various teachers and holy men, gurus and so on, and that's when I first went to Nepal and India, and I was even in Iran for a while, and so we were chasing down the sources of some of the spiritual teachers who'd come to the United States.
And you weren't Swami at this time?
No, I wasn't Swami. I was actually a cameraman on this film production crew.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I was doing camera work. So I would, go to all these places and we would film holy men.
What a fun
spiritual
adventure.
Teachers, right, yeah. No, it obviously had a big influence on me.
Obviously had a big influence on you, didn't it?
Yeah, really.
So what were some of those initial influences over there that really kind of turned you on, set you off, got you going?
Well, I mean, I was actually influenced by some of the Sufi Muslim movement and how they relate to dance and music and so on as a spiritual teaching. But then also I studied some Buddhism, and then mostly I just got into meditating and doing yoga.
How about the cannabis consumption? I want to know about that part.
Well, that always went along with it because, I got to San Francisco in the summer of love, and so that's when, we were all kind of smoking, and I smoked on Hippie Hill and so on, and it was just part of the culture that that's what we did. But I always like to say people that I always called it like an inspirational lift. I don't like to use the word recreational or adult in cannabis. To me, it's always been inspirational. I mean, that's why we all did it in the early days. Is the food tastes better, the music sounded better.
And if you're a cameraman, you're working with visuals.
You're totally focused in on the visual thing. And so just all those things, you were more aware and more alive and more intense with the cannabis as your ally, as your friend. And
sure.
But yeah, in those days we would smoke stuff from Mexico, which was the best. It was, Acapulco Gold and then there was Panama Red, which I always thought was the best cannabis I ever smoked. But
really?
See, now there's another thing. Panama Red was red. I mean, it was almost this color, right? But what I realized later is that because it was aged.
All right.
It wasn't green fresh, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't get it till like 5 or 6 months after it had already been harvested and so on. So
were you paying attention at that time? Were you realizing at that time? Did you know that it was aged?
No, I didn't know much about it at all.
Panama Red, right?
I just knew that I got the stonedest I ever got when I smoked a joint of Panama Red.
Sure.
There was no question about that.
What stood out about the Panama Red other than the color?
It was just totally stony stuff. But it was also just a very smooth smoke. And it was like this, I can almost recreate the taste of it. It was so rich.
Tell me, what was that like?
So earthy and so on, but it was also smooth. The judging of the cup is based on how you would evaluate if you were going to buy this, right? And then we take it 6 steps further, right?
Sure.
So the first thing you're going to look at, well, how's it trimmed, right? Is it trimmed too tight or is it trimmed too loose, right? Can you still see the structure, the kind of architecture of the bud from the trim, where they get in with the points and get rid of the crow's feet, right? And so, and that's the first thing you look at. Then you're evaluating the color. And in the cup, then I get a 60 times little mini microscope, and I look at the trichomes, right? And I see, do they all have their tops on?
Jeweler's loop.
Yeah, but it's 60 times, right? So if it doesn't have its top on, it's, oh, well, maybe this was really mishandled, maybe it's machine trim or something like that. Something's now missing, right? And now we're already at that point, we're also evaluating the smell, the aroma, the fragrance, I call it. And that's the terpenes. So yeah, so now we're trying to say, well, what do we got? We got a really subtle little, almost a lavender in there, but with a slight little bit of orange, not so much tangy or anything, just a little bit of that. And well, there's some sort of floral thing in there too. I'm not sure what the flower is. It's
I'm getting some earthiness in there as
I
well.
just got that earthiness too. Exactly right. It's like breaking it apart. Already, it's now off gassing.
Okay.
Because terpenes are volatile organic compounds. So
before you start prepping that, is there any other evaluation that happens before you start?
When you truly evaluate cannabis, you involve all of your senses. So that's what I love. When someone opens one of our jars and they take the freshness seal off and they say, wow.
You just know it has an intense terpene content. Does it tell you anything else?
Now that's developed recently over the years, where we began to appreciate all the different subtleties of the fragrances, right? You're really enjoying the thrill of not only the flavor, but the associations that go along with the aroma, with the fragrance, right?
Yeah.
So where did it come from? Sometimes, it's like, oh, that smells like the back street of Singapore or something like that, or
and
whatever.
Memory is so associative
so
with odor, so it just takes you back, like, to the back street
perfume
or something.
or whatever. Yeah, so that sort of thing, or like some are old sneakers, and so all those sort of associations that give you a kind of a picture of the aroma. Right, and so that's the whole thing about the connoisseurship, is you're on a journey of sensory exploration and association with other things that have happened in your life, stimulated by that, right?
That's a beautiful way of putting it, Swami. I never heard it put that way.
Well, because smoking a joint to me is a journey. It's a journey of association, of remembrance, of also watching your own attitude, your own feelings change, sensing parts of your body that are now relaxed or something like that. So the whole idea, and as the joint gets smaller and smaller, we'll go through that later, it's like
looking forward to that.
The taste smell changes as you go through, right?
Yeah, it evolves as it goes
evolves,
through,
right? And so those are the different oils and the different terpenes that tend to vaporize at different temperatures.
We're going to discuss that too.
That's technical stuff,
That's
right?
the technical stuff, but we're going to get into it, aren't we? I understand you brought some tools to show us today.
These are just very simple tools, right?
All right.
My Emerald Cup grinder, it's from Mendo Mulcher. And this one, as I said, it has a 2007 Emerald Cup on it.
And how does that help?
The grind, not only is it important for it to be fresh, but it's important for it to be, what we say, more or less homogeneous. So you want something that's got a nice, even consistency, and that means that you're going to get a good grind. Now, interesting, this is cannabis from 2016, and so it's over a year old, but it's been stored in the proper way and cured in the proper way. So it's a much smoother, milder smoke than you would normally get. The mystical element of cannabis is the fact that we have endocannabinoids, molecules in our bodies that are so similar to the plant molecules that they just go together naturally, right? And so these interior molecules give us a special psychic connection with this plant. And if you can listen to the plant, it will talk to you and tell you what it needs, when it needs, and how it needs, right? And so then it turns out that the plant grows for you.
You're talking about plant intelligence.
Plant intelligence, plant consciousness,
Plant
right?
consciousness.
And so when I take my seeds and I have the seeds in my hand in the beginning, and then I sprout them on unbleached coffee filter paper, and I put drops of Ganges water on them, right? All of this is like talking to the spirit of the plant and saying, please, please, be my friend, help me, bring me spiritual well-being. And that's how cannabis can work like that. Okay, now see, I'm tamping this joint.
Yeah.
To pack it in, because there's a whole kind of way that I don't like. I'm such a snob. I can't. A badly rolled joint just really kind of upsets me. So
You're actually kind of cramming it down in there.
that's because of the good fine grind, you see.
And it doesn't get too tight.
No, it doesn't. Because
And why do you prefer it that way?
I don't know. It just smokes better, and people say, Swami, you don't roll joints, you manufacture joints, but I do them one at a time, right? But something about how it smokes smooth and even, and also very often, we always have guests, so usually 3 or 4 or 5 people will be smoking on this joint, so it's also got to, stay lit. A joint that goes out while it's smoking,
no fun.
In the cup, if a joint goes out while I'm smoking, I don't even care. I just don't even bother anymore.
So what is that? So that was beyond how it was rolled at that point.
It was had to do with the curing.
The cure.
Just not right.
So before you spark that, is there anything that you do? Is there any other, ritual or?
I don't do so much the ritual. Sometimes I do, but what I always do is a dry hit.
Okay. What does that tell you?
You tell me. This is the final evaluation before you smoke it. And is it the same terpene that you got with your nose? Should be pretty similar.
It's very similar, but yeah, getting it through my mouth, it's layered a little differently.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting. I'm getting the same notes, but they're layered.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the different. So what happens is when you eat, right, your tongue tastes salt, sweet, sour, and bitter, but it doesn't taste so much flavor. The flavor is from the terpenes, and you taste the terpenes in your nose. So when you're eating and you chew, you force air back up out of your mouth into your nose, and that's what tastes the flavor. So now, how do you smoke? Someone accused me on Instagram that I don't know how to smoke, right?
Okay.
Well, okay, that's your opinion.
Let's start with the light. Let's start with how you spark it.
Well, first of all, the dry hit, and you evaluate that. So now you light it like a cigar, where you kind of rotate it and make sure it's lit all around, especially a fatter joint. This isn't one of my fatter joints, but some of my joints are like an 1/8. Now, I don't put a filter in either, and a lot of people don't like that, but I can taste the filter.
And I see that you're puffing. I'm seeing a puff, 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 as opposed to
I'm getting it lit.
Okay. This is still getting it lit. What did you just do?
Salute the goddess. But if I'm going to smoke in a more ceremonial issue, then I will say, Hara Hara Mahadev, Alak Ko Deab Halak, Dekho Dunya Khajalak. And that's an ancient Sanskrit saying about, behold the wonder of the world, visible through the stimulation of cannabis. Now, one of the keys of Hinduism is that any way that you access the divine is between you and the divine. And on the more enlightened levels of it, when you don't judge someone else on how they access the divine.
Sure.
Oh wow, a little bit of that, tiny bit of the tangy's coming out now. Yeah.
And you say coming out now, meaning it's like we talked about earlier, that evolution, the journey of the joint, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a
always smoked joints. This is always your method of evaluation, your go-to. What is it about the joint that...
Okay, now you could get a really long spiel.
Hey, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, I was reading this patent for cannabis filed by the federal government. And in the patent, they were outlining the medical reasons for it. Okay. But they also said, and I'm trying to remember this right, that THC vaporizes at 166 degrees Celsius centigrade. CBD vaporizes at 188 degrees centigrade. And that means there's 22 degrees centigrade between THC and CBD. Mm-hmm. So what I deduced from that is that every different cannabinoid and every different terpene vaporizes at a distinct, unique temperature. With the joint, as you're rolling it, you're already getting those terpenes that are off-gassing. Mm-hmm. Now you got a joint and it's at room temperature. So you take a dry hit. So you're getting all those terpenes that off-gas at room temperature. Now you light it. Now, at the cherry, it's just a combustion.
Yes.
But at your mouthpiece, it's now 2 degrees above room temperature. And as the cherry moves through the joint, there's a continuous rise in temperature scale from room temperature to combustion for the whole joint. And that's the only way that you get every compound that combusts in there as it vaporizes.
It's not only combusting, it's vaporizing
Yes.
as well.
Now, as a connoisseur, you also know that sometimes the best hit in the whole joint is 3/4 to a half an inch from the end, right down here. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, that hit is the summation, the compilation of all the other things that I've already tasted, and that's again part of the journey.
How does that happen? Because it's pulled it from
all the oils now have condensed, and now at this back point, they're all sort of saturated.
This continues to build.
Yeah. Right.
So
that's part of the journey. You get a different flavor in each part of the joint.
So taking that all the way through, you potentially are getting some of the best hits at just those last couple.
Right, exactly. It's the summation of everything else that's come before, because you'll see the oils are building up back here.
I'm looking forward to finding out. It's getting better as we go here. No, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the thing about smoking a cigar. When people who are really into cigars, they say, you're just going to sit down and you're going to smoke that cigar. You're not going to do anything else. You're going to sit down and you're going to smoke that. And I said, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
What I'm hearing is to slow down and savor the experience. That's a big part of the connoisseurship. Right?
Well, it's also, it's a coffee break, it's a cigarette break, it's a stop in the action. But now stop and focus and say, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
Enjoy the moment. Mm-hmm. Truly, and that's how you truly evaluate what's going on there. Get the nuance of it, mm-hmm. Right?
Well, there you see, one of the things, sometimes we score something somewhat high, you'd think, in the Emerald Cup because of the nuance and the complexity. And I'm a snob. The sophistication there, it's like, wow, what is that? Oh, wow, what is that flavor? I can't put my finger on that flavor. Oh, yeah.
And that's when you know you have something unique.
Yeah, because like I say, a lot of the joints in the Emerald Cup, we only smoke like a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the ones that win, we smoke all the way down.
So your fingertips are burning.
Absolutely, we get the roach out and so on. It's like, and it actually, one time after the end of a judging, a person came into the room and they said, well, they see all these roaches out on the table, like 100 roaches out on the table, right, at the judging. And they say, well, which one do you think I should smoke? Which one's the best? And the bird look at him and say, the smallest one.
The one that's not there anymore.
The one that everybody wanted to take another hit on.
Where do you see cannabis connoisseurship heading from here?
Well,
I see just the beginnings of it brewing now.
Well, what I'm encouraged by, I've seen some statistics about the young people who are starting to smoke in their 20s now, that an awful lot of them are also choosing flower, right? Because the only way to truly experience cannabis in its totality is through the flower. Now you can go to hash, and that's a wonderful, wonderful way to smoke, and dabs and all those other things, but to truly appreciate what it is, you have to start with the flower, and then you find the totality of the flavor that you get, right?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree
and so
more.
a lot of the younger smokers are starting to realize that. So, if they start with a vape pen or an edible or whatever it is, and at a certain point, the person who's really curious and really loves the flavor of things, they're going to eventually gravitate.
I'm starting to see clubs pop up, not dissimilar from the High Rollers Lounge here. There's a place in Frisco, I think, Barbary Coast. They've got
Well, San Francisco, please.
Oh, excuse me.
Can't let you get away with that. It's San Francisco. It's not even San Francisco, it's San Francisco. So the Barbary Coast is a wonderful smoking lounge right in the heart of San Francisco.
Yeah, and you mentioned next month or sometime coming up, you're having this kind of event, right?
What we're having is a Swami Select Salon there, and we've been doing those for about 3 years now. And what it is we have 2 to 3 farmers who come in with 3 different strains of flower. And then we have 60 or 70 people who are invited, and they get to smoke as much as they want. Plus there's hors d'oeuvres and maybe some beer or something like that. But we then have a discussion about how to go about truly sampling and savoring and being a connoisseur of the cannabis.
And that's what I'm talking about. No, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And about the future of connoisseurship
Right.
is it needs these places like that
Right.
to promote it, to nurture it.
Right. Well, one of the great things about that was that this is a gathering of people, 60 to 70 people, who all just love cannabis. And now we're not just hiding in the corner because I don't want my people in the office to know that I smoke. No, we're here to celebrate the best that you've got and to try 6 to 12 different strains of cannabis right there and talk about them. Right? And smoke joints. Now you can have a pipe if you want, but most of us are smoking joints.
What we
right?
just mentioned before. Stop.
Yeah.
Slow down. Pay attention.
And focus in on it and discuss it and say, well, do you taste that lemon in there? So maybe there's some cardamom or something like that. Oh no, I get old sneakers out of that one. This is various things like that. So what we've tried to do, especially in the Emerald Cup and also in the Swami Select Salons, is talk about cannabis the way they talk about wine. Right? And you talk about, what the nose is with wine, and you also look at the color of what the right?
Because all of those things translate over. The same thing from the cigar connoisseurship world. They had similar theories.
So that's the way I do see the market. It'll be just like those other markets where you have Cuban cigar and your $150 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. All right, and then you'll have your $2 chuck, or is it now $4 chuck, and you'll have your, your bugle tobacco or your Dunhill, whatever it is, and people will gravitate to that part of the market where they find their satisfaction.
And that's what it is. Is there's always going to be a market, for quality, and that's
Right.
what cannabis connoisseurship's all about, isn't it? This variety, you thought it was the Cuvée, perhaps?
Cuvée, yeah.
It's feel good.
Yeah.
It's up. It's energetic. It's cerebral.
Yeah, that's another part that we like about, we're not too much into the couch lock, but there are definitely places for that when you need to just chill out. But, there are times in the Emerald Cup when, okay, we smoke 17 joints and we're feeling, can we do just one more? Oh, I guess maybe we have to do one more. And all of a sudden it's just, boing, now I'm like wide awake for another 45 minutes and so on, because that's that cerebral.
And those are right, the ones that kind of cut through and zero in.
There's kind of a saturation level you get to, and the scientists, people are talking about that, how at a certain point the THC will get so high, and then the CBD content will come down and say, "Ooh, hold on there a little bit there, right?" So there's always this balancing between the THC and the CBD elements, and some of the other elements we're not really so familiar with either. So there's a certain point which kind of puts out a leveling thing. So you get to a plateau when you smoke that much.
And what can you do? Is there anything you can do about that?
Well, no, you're just clear. You don't think you're stoned. right? You're so stoned you don't think you're stoned, and you're at this plateau, and then you smoke one, and then it just goes,
I'm stoned right now.
bingo, and it cuts beyond all those others, and you say, oh, that's one's got something else in there and something more, whatever. The agreement amongst the judges is so amazing year in and year out. But it's just amazing how much out of 600 samples or 500 samples, something like that, the top 50 just pull out, and then the top 20, and then the top 3. It's just pretty amazing.
So I know the last few years have had like a lot of entries, 600, 700. You've been doing it 14 times now. How many different samples do you think you've had? You've had thousands. You've literally had thousands.
Thousands of samples, right. It's been an honor and a privilege, let me tell you, it really has.
Of some of the finest cannabis grown on the planet, right? Because of where it's coming from.
And that's curious. Well, as Tim Blake was saying, who's a creator of the Emerald Cup, he's saying, well, for years it would be like 25, 30, 50, not more than 50% of the entries would come from Mendo. But 75% of the winners would come from Mendo. And then the others were from Humboldt. Now we've spread out, we got some Grass Valley people, some Monterey people coming, and so on and so forth. So it's spreading out, that culture. But for years it was like basically, what are you thinking?
This is getting, it's getting a little bit richer and sweeter. I'm almost getting like this dark chocolate.
There's a little mole in there.
Yeah, it's chocolate with the spice. I was going to say, I was almost going to say a chocolate with the spice.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
This is still
so sweet.
See, we can adjust this. This even wasn't even one of my bigger joints, actually, I have to say, but we're doing quite well by it.
Yeah, we're working through it. So what are your thoughts on this? How are you feeling?
Well, bright. Yeah, of course, I like that in a cannabis. It's like,
I'm so happy you chose that. You could have put one over on me. Like,
oh, what? Put you out on a?
Yeah,
oh, right, okay.
Yeah, no, you chose wisely.
Well, see, the way I choose what to smoke on any given moment, you see, you have to understand that next to my chair, there's like at least 12 or 15 strains all sitting there in these nice purple jars. And so which one am I going to smoke at any moment? Oh, well, you should smoke this one in the morning, and this one's good for chores, and so on. And actually, that's true, and so on. But I just do it intuitively. I just reach over here, which one? Oh, okay, that's the one I'm going to smoke. Right?
Yeah, it calls out to you.
And so that's the one, because there is this symbiotic relationship, this consciousness with our endocannabinoids. They know what they need to augment their activity. And there are some people who are saying that this anandamide, which is one of the endocannabinoids that we have in us, the translation is bliss from Sanskrit, bliss. It's the bliss molecule we have. That many of our social and psychological problems and imbalance in life, dis-ease, is from a lack of anandamide. And this is still in the very early stages, this is not medical science, whatever, but the fact is that this anandamide is what has a balancing and a look at the future bright kind of attitude.
And are they finding the cannabis, how do they find it?
And when there's a deficiency of that, it causes all kinds of problems, and that's what cannabis from the plant, phytocannabis or exocannabinoids, they provide that which the anandamide is lacking or insufficient. And that's why the feeling of well-being, of balance, of harmony, and then other reasons. The other one, the 2-AG, that's the other interior cannabinoid, endocannabinoid, and that one is for the whole body and the organism. So, and that's about the organs of the body communicating with one another and establishing the balance of their relationship. And so this idea of your whole body is now infused with the combination of the CBD and the THC, which is dealing with your anandamide and your 2-AG, which is then rebalancing your body and communicating with all the different internal organs and saying, well, you gave me too much of that last time, chill out. Man, you don't need to worry about the pain over here, and this sort of thing. And it's a consciousness within the plant, which is now within us, and it's that symbiotic mental, physical relationship that we have with this plant, which is absolutely unique.
People look at me funny when I tell them, you know, that hey, I grow these plants, and then ultimately I become one with them. Mm-hmm. They literally bind with us in our receptors on that level. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's how much more intimate, you know, can you get?
Right, right. Well, you can be intimately connected also when you grow it, because now, say if you're making compost from your vegetable scraps. So here you're eating this, and the leftover, you know, banana peels and carrots and so on, they go to feed your plants. Right? And so you're feeding your plants primarily with plant food, although I do use some like chicken manure and stuff like that. But there's a whole idea that what you're, you know, since our molecules are so similar to plant molecules, you know the difference between chlorophyll and hemoglobin?
No.
Hemoglobin is an essential part of our blood. I think it carries the oxygen. And chlorophyll is part of photosynthesis, which is carbon, oxygen, and so on. The difference between chlorophyll and hemoglobin is one molecule. In plants, it's nitrogen, and in humans, it's iron. Iron carries the oxygen because it's magnetic, and the nitrogen is what's essential to to both the DNA and RNA, and also to the photosynthesis process.
You're taking us very, very deep down this rabbit hole today.
Man. Did you want to know about the effects? We just got molecular here, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this
so
idea.
I guess that the effects, right? Talk about cerebral, man.
Yeah, you become you enter your consciousness into the consciousness on the molecular level of your own body and the plant that are so compatible with one another. And if you grow it, it's a total cycle that way.
I could listen to you all day. Yeah, but we got to get going.
Okay.
This was a far out session, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I enjoyed this a lot. Okay.
Well, we're smoking and drinking coffee. What can I say?
Yeah, it doesn't get any better.
Talking stuff.
Yeah,
so.
Cannabis connoisseurship at its finest, right?
Well, see, that's what Swami Select is on, and it's almost like we're in our living room up at you know, Swami Select up in the mountains.
That's what we created here in the High Rollers Lounge. Right. Yeah, and I hope everybody enjoyed this trip and journey that we took with Swami, with Swami's joint, and see you guys next time. That was a lot of fun, huh? Right. I think this thing's still going here. I see it's still smoking. I want to.